So Jonas, you started your career in news reporting. What drew you to that? What drew you to that field, that profession?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea of being a news reporter was something that intrigued me even as a young kid. I mean, I was always very inquisitive, always liked to ask a lot of questions. I wouldn't take the, standard sort of responses to things lightly. So when someone would say because, or if there was something occurring in my normal life and I would ask a question, why is that happening, or what's happening, or how does that work? And someone said, because, or I would ask the next question. And because I always wanted the full picture. I always wanted to have the full understanding of what was going on. I didn't want to miss anything. So maybe a little bit of FOMO. But yeah, I mean, that kind of always was there. And I didn't really have one of those getting right out of high school and into college. I kind of knew that I had a creative bend. I knew how to see stories and tell them and get people interested. And when I got into college and we started to explore what I wanted to do, journalism and communications and becoming a journalist just sort of fit. It just was a natural fit for me. So
is it an adrenaline rush?
Of course. It's,
this is before, the early stages, I guess, of internet news and clicks and likes. And I mean, it's just the
clicks and the likes, not so much. I mean, I never did anything because of that piece, but, I kind of was, my journalism career sort of happened in a social media world. There wasn't a lot of click-throughs and things weren't really being measured that way yet. So I was sort of what they called at the time terrestrial news. So meaning everything was still broadcast in normal sort of lines. People were watching on their televisions and watching the Fox or watching CBS or NBC or ABC. So I didn't get measured on that as much. The adrenaline rush for me was always when I knew I had a story that no one else had, or I had what we would call in the business, you got the get. So you got something that was moving the story forward or telling it in a compelling way. And you were juiced knowing that was happening, or you were getting that. And then, as you would get ready to go live, having worked hard all day to prepare this story that you're turning in a day, and going live for the 5 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news, you get pretty amped up. Your adrenaline would get going. Obviously later on, as I got into, digital media and started focusing on technology and that level of work, and now social media is at play. Yeah. I mean, you get excited about how the content will perform, where it will go, how it will get repurposed or used. But there is an element of adrenaline that kind of gets you up and gets you going, because you're going to have that every single day, and every single day is going to be completely different.
But those early days must have been exciting, right?
Oh, yeah.
You got a crew, you're running the stories, you're putting it live.
Exciting.
Recognize you.
Yeah, exciting when you're in a small market. When you first start out in television news, you had to go to a small market, and you were what we called a one-man band. So you had to shoot your own video, you had to write your own stories, you had to edit your own stories and get it ready. And then if you had the big story, they would send a live truck or a satellite truck to wherever you were, so you could do it live, obviously deliver the story live. But yeah, it's a lot of work. So in those days, you would start out in a small market, you would work your way up. You would sign a couple-year contract and you'd be at a station, and then you'd go to the next level up. So if you're in market, 152, your next jaunt, you want to get to market one, you want to get in the top 100. So maybe your market 70, and then your market 10, and then your market 5. And then if you're, really good, you go to the network. So there's a progression that happens in that industry where you get to the next level. So it's a little different. But it's also, there's not as much, the idea in television news, especially, is hey, you're on television, you're reaching 3 to 5 million people. Their incentive is a contract and hopefully a good pay, but you're not getting stock and you're not getting RSUs and you're not, it's not as opportunistic or people don't build legacy wealth necessarily in the television news industry.
No, I totally get that. And obviously you said you had a natural aptitude for it, or curiosity, a natural aptitude meeting with hard work, because tell us a little bit, your rocket took off pretty fast, right? I mean, you had some good success.
Yeah. I mean, early on, I kind of, once I kind of got out of the norms of sort of being an associate producer and sort of developing your chops in the news industry, you kind of decide if you want to be behind the camera or in front of the camera. And if you're behind the camera, you're looking at being an associate producer and a producer and a lineman, and you're doing all these things that are behind the scenes. You're sitting in the booth and you're operationalizing the entire newscast. And it's about telling this hour-long story or whatever it is that sort of is encompassing the day's news. If you're in front of the camera, you want to, build and be a reporter and go to the next level. And I started my career in Tampa as an associate producer and was working at Fox 13, which was the flagship Fox station. It was a top 15 market. So it was a real opportunity to do something different, but to get on camera, everybody kept saying, you got to go on camera. You're a great storyteller. You got to go to a small market. So I had to pack up and I made a tape and sent tapes all over the country, every market I could send one to. And fortunately for me, Panama City, which was also in Florida, called me and said, hey, we need an anchor, a weekend anchor and a 3-day-a-week reporter. And so it was my first opportunity to do something at the next level. And then from there, I went to Fort Myers, Florida. I was there for 2 years at the NBC affiliate. And then NBC sort of said, hey, we're building a station in San Francisco. So to go from market 72 at the time to market number 5, it just was kind of unheard of. So it was a huge opportunity to move to that next level. And I jumped at the chance.
Absolutely. I mean, and you did well. I mean, in the sense that, you're an Emmy Award winning journalist. I mean, you've covered some big stories. You've done some really impressive work.
Yeah. I found some, the funny thing about Emmys is it doesn't, an Emmy Award doesn't get you any more money necessarily. It doesn't get you any more, you're not going to get an increase in pay and you're not going to necessarily get an extended contract because you're an Emmy winner. But the prestige of winning an Emmy Award was, something that I was excited about because you can never take that away, right? I'll forever be, 2-time Emmy Award winning journalist, Jonas Tichenor. And it doesn't necessarily translate in the business world. People are like, I don't care if you have an Emmy Award. I think it looks good on a resume and people are like, oh my gosh, you got an Emmy. Well, tell me about that. And it's a fun story to tell. But in the journalism world, that success means that you have achieved a certain level of polish and storytelling, and you really can tell an interesting one. And a mentor of mine who's won, over 60 Emmys, he's like a machine. His name is Wayne Friedman, he was based in San Francisco. He one time told me, if you want to win Emmys, kid, tell stories about kids or involve pets. If you have dogs, cats, pets, or kids, and you tell a great narrative, you'll get an Emmy nod. So I think I had 9 Emmy nominations and I took the trophy home twice, which was huge. And I think I'm most proud of winning an Edward R. Murrow Award. When you think about excellence in journalism, that is the penultimate. Like that's the one that you're like, oh my gosh. So I think I'm most proud of that. I love having a couple of Emmy Awards, and when people come to the house, they're like, "Wow, what is that?" But yeah, that success happened after I got to California and really honed how to tell interesting stories and narratives and craft those in a way that would get people's attention. They always say you got to win the hearts and minds. Well, if you can do that in storytelling, people, and you do it well, people find it's interesting and there's success there.
I guess what's coming up for me is, are there any similarities between being a successful reporter and being a professional athlete in some ways? Like you're as good as your last season, you can be transferred, moved. There's a lot of, there's huge wins, but there's also some great uncertainty, maybe, if I'm using the right language. It's
a great point. And there are a lot of similarities to that. And I think, I think there's an old saying, when you become a reporter and you're moving up the ranks and getting to the next level, that you can't have the 3 Ps. I think it was 3 Ps. It was you don't want to have plants, partners, or it was plants, partners, something else. I don't know. There's 3 of them. I'll have to think of it.
Yeah, sure.
There are these things that you can't have. You can't have, pets, plants, partners, and pets. You live out of a suitcase, and you're constantly moving, and you're constantly getting called to stories. So trying to foster, roots becomes very difficult, because my contract here in San Francisco is 3 years, and a new news director may come in, and the news director that hired me or thinks I'm brilliant, the next guy's like, this guy's a clown, so we're getting rid of him. So you don't have any guarantees. Once you reach the top 5 markets, even in some cases top 10, those become locations where people want to live, right? You want to live in the Bay Area, or you want to live in Tampa, or you want to live in Houston or Dallas. So people try to, you just become not a slave, but you sort of get into this groove where you're living a comfortable lifestyle, and it's more difficult to leave. So for me, coming to San Francisco and building something here, you didn't necessarily want to leave, but you're also not completely in control of your own destiny.
No, right. Yeah. And I would have to imagine the burnout rate in something like this has to be pretty high.
It's high. Yeah. You find a lot of folks, there were a lot of folks that I started off with in the news business as a young reporter, who got out of the business very quickly, or after a year or 2 years, or you get homesick. People miss their families. You're missing a lot of birthdays. You're missing a lot of Christmases. You're missing a lot of Thanksgivings. And you just get to a point where you don't want to keep doing that. And some people, that breaking point happens really early in their career. And some people, it takes a while. But you look at it and you say, okay, what's the next thing, right? If you're playing at this level, what will I do next? And for me, it was, look, I'm achieving a network level reporter. I'm doing these things at a high level. The only place to go is either you fight for a network anchor position, or you get on the network at that level, or you stay where you are and you just keep doing it. And I just got to a place where I feel like I had done all those things. So for me, the transition out took a while, but it was the right move for me at the right time. Well,
let's talk about that, because that's super. Because what I'm hearing you say is like, man, you're on call 24/7. I mean, that's what the lifestyle is, right? You're kind of on call 24/7, but you were still winning at the game. I mean, I really want to make this a very clear point. You were winning at the game, and there was a lot of upside still left on the table, right? Like So it wasn't like when you were coming to this fork in the road, you invested a lot of time, you paid your dues, and now you're being promised a pretty big carrot, or that at least there's a path to that national or more national spot. Is that correct? I mean, you had a clear line of sight on what that could be, and it was getting confirmed, right? I mean,
I mean, I think 2000s, the 2000s, early 2000s. I mean, I was covering stories. I'll never forget getting the text on my pager. We had pagers back then.
I remember
from our news team. Early in the morning, saying, grab your run bag, get to the office as quickly as you can. The Twin Towers in New York have been attacked, and we don't know when you're going to be going home. And there was all of these stories along the way, from that one to then covering, the Scott Peterson murder trial here in San Francisco, and then covering the Philip Garrido trial. And there's just so many things that you do that make you want to keep going. But you also get to a place where you kind of think about whether or not it makes sense to keep doing them, because you're also, for every one of those, you're also every year doing the Easter egg hunt story, or the garlic festivals. So, and then by the way, you're also chasing ambulances, and you're standing out in the rain, and you're looking at, or you're in the snow, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? yes, I have great moments, and you sit down with heads of state or a president or a rock star, or you're flying in an F-16 with the Thunderbirds, and those moments make it fantastic. But you also have far more moments where you're not doing that, and there's not a lot going on that day. And so I'm standing at a gas station, I'm talking about gas prices.
No, I get it. It's very diluted, like some really big highs, but I get it.
There's more of those days than there were days where I was like, wow, this is the greatest job ever. And when the job was great, it literally was the best ever. I mean, you never had to worry about getting at a table at a restaurant. You never had to worry about, people would come up and they want your autograph and they want to talk to you, and you're a very interesting person. But they're not the ones standing there freezing because, we've got to cover a weather story and you're just getting pummeled by a hurricane, or you're putting yourself in these positions. And for me, it was just getting to a place where, like, do I want, I'm getting married and I'm going to have kids. And is this the sort of life that I want to live? And
it seems like it could get really easy to get addicted to the adrenaline and chasing those highs, right? You want to look for that next big high. So you're saying, when you decided to start your transition, was it like a burning bush moment, or was it just a thousand small decisions? Like, was it 1,000 small? How did that begin?
It wasn't. I love that phrase, the burning bush moment. I don't think it was a burning bush moment. It was a 1,000 little things that kept pointing me towards doing something different. Okay. There was so many moments where, you're up at 3 a.m. and you're getting to your next assignment, and you're sitting in the live van and you're having bad coffee from 7-Eleven. No offense to 7-Eleven, but you're just sitting in this van and you're with this person who's sitting next to you, your photographer, and you're trying to sort out what am I doing? Am I making a difference? I'm constantly covering people who are making the news, but I'm just an observer in that world. I'm not actually doing anything. I'm not changing anything. I'm chronicling what other people are doing. And I think overall you start to say, there's more for me out there than just making chronicles of what other people are doing. There's more opportunity for me to do something, to be a agent of change, or a newsmaker myself. And
I'm hearing the word impact is what I'm hearing.
Impact, giving back, philanthropy, time, all of those things. And journalists do it. And trust me, there's opportunities there. For me, the path was, I don't know that I want to go to the next level, because that requires me to move yet again to New York or LA. And I'm comfortable where I am, and I'm building a family, and I prefer to not go.
So you come to this decision, you got clarity, you start the transition process, you tell your peers, you tell your family, you tell your friends, and of course they cheer you on, right? Everyone cheers you on and tells you what a fantastic decision you're making.
It depends on the friend, but many of them were supportive. There were many.
Really? Okay.
There were many that said, this seems crazy. Like, you're walking away. I was wondering about that. You're walking away from a decorated career as a journalist, and you're going to just be a normal person, and you're walking away at what may be the highest part of your career, and there's still room for you.
Right.
But the people who knew me well and know me, they kind of got it. They're like, okay, you're going to do something else. You're going to find equal success, and you're going to do it on your terms and not be controlled by the whim of a news director who just decides that, they don't like you, so your contract ends. And there were all of those things that went into the decision to walk away from it. And, there were days where I regretted it. And there were days where I thought to myself, why would you have done this? It's like, this sounds egotistical, and it's not intended to sound this way, but having gone from being this person that people are calling on the phone and they want to talk to you, and would you come here, and can you be the MC for our event, or suddenly you're not getting those calls. You're not getting the table in the corner with, at the restaurant. And it's like, a little bit like they've taken your cape off. You're no longer Avenger worthy. And now you're just you're a normal human being, right? You're not getting the trips to Disney and the things that in the ballrooms and the black tie events quite as much. And I think that part of it was not as important to me. And all of those losses or things that were kind of going away were not as important as kind of trailblazing my own path and figuring out what that looked like. And having worked in Silicon Valley and developed a pretty steady diet of technology, that was the path that started to shift for me. And I thought, I can tell interesting and cool stories. I can just do it the way I want to do it and help build a brand in the process. And that skill set doesn't always translate direct. I mean, I have a lot of news friends who over the years have said, oh my God, how did you transition from television into technology? Because the two things just don't go as well together. And it was a path to get there, but it wouldn't have happened had I not made the decision to get out of something that I was very comfortable doing and could have, and we would laugh. And I would say, I can literally do this job in my sleep. It was the easiest thing on the planet for me to tell great stories. I mean, I said to someone one time, if you give me a blade of grass and I will figure out how to tell a cool story. And I had mentors and people that I looked up to, right? The Bob Dotsons of the world who, the Jeannie Mosts of the world who told insanely cool stories and would figure out how to create a surprise. Those were things that excited me. But I thought, I can do this, but I can also do it with more control of my destiny.
I love that, because you're still a great storyteller. You just transitioned into a different medium, right? And then you caught a massive wave in social media and technology, and it really fired up just as you were transitioning in, or thereabouts. Is that true? Am I reading?
No. I mean, I think the news industry, when I got out, the news industry was going through a transformation, and that transformation was how people were consuming content. And the consumption of content was still very much about your televisions. I mentioned it earlier, terrestrial, but the digital transformation that was taking place in that world, you were starting to see this pull away from the normal way of doing things, right? YouTube was now very popular. Facebook is very popular. Twitter is very popular. These platforms are now taking on a more responsible role for how content is distributed and how people are watching it. And you didn't need the normal television as much. And so as I'm exiting that format, the online world is quickly outpacing how people are consuming their content. And so for me, it was like the writing is on the wall. I sat down and had a very long conversation with my agent, and she said, if you're going to do this, now's the time, because you're going to be so far ahead of this curve. It may take 4 or 5 years for the technology to catch up to where you're going. But once it does, you'll have recentered and rebuilt something, and that is the wave of the future. So this is a fantastic opportunity for you to do this. And she was pivotal in helping me figure out what I was going to do next.
Yeah. And, you came from such a fast-paced world. It must be one of the, at least back in the day, it was one of the fastest-paced industries you could be in, right? Which was news, right? Has that speed finally caught up to you where you are today? That speed of like, you can create something, deliver it, get a reaction.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it has, but in some ways not. Like, one of the things I love about the work that you do in marketing and brand and communications is there are elements of that have to be done in real time and at a pace that sometimes is very much like what you're describing. Right. Being involved in social media for an organization and helping craft content that will go out on social and motion graphics and things that are compelling. That's a business. But you have to react to those things in very much real time. And I remember going to, one of the companies I worked at, VMware, they wanted an editorial communications lead because they wanted to be able to react to what was happening in the market. And they wanted to be able to do it in real time. And they wanted to be able to be a part of a conversation that they might otherwise miss. And so as I'm sort of developing out these chops, now we have social listening tools, right? We have ways of seeing what people are talking about and inserting ourselves either into the conversation or starting a conversation that's going to have, a long tail. And that was a huge opportunity. And that does keep pace with the things that are happening. But for every one of those, you've also got brand campaigns where you're really thinking thoughtfully through which stories you want to tell, which ones you want to tell globally or at scale, which ones are more regional focused. You want to be able to find the connection between how technology affects the average person, the average human, and how that human either benefits or their life changes because of the technology. So you get more time to sort of really think through and craft narratives that will ultimately have a big effect for a company. But there is still that content generation that does have to happen pretty quickly at times. And when you start delivering on that, that's where the pace picks up, right? If you're building a brand campaign and you're thinking through the social media aspects of it, the out of home and the digital advertising and the demand gen and all these things, and then you reach a point where, okay, we're going to hit the go button, on March 14th, suddenly it's game on, right? And that adrenaline and that pace does pick up, but you have time to build it, which you don't have in news. You wake up every morning in the television world and every day is you're starting from scratch. There is no, you might get to the station and they'll say, hey, we got a story we want you to cover. Or they would say, hey, meet your photographer at the Starbucks because you guys are heading straight to Sacramento or whatever it is. Yeah. But by and large, you wake up every day and it's a completely clean slate. You're going to build something and you're going to create it from scratch, which was something that I loved. But I also love the time to do it right and do it the way that I want to do it, as opposed to being rushed, which you found yourself being a lot.
No, it seems like the two words are coming up for me. One is instinct and one is intellect, right? You can still, on those rush jobs, right? The VMware example, it appeals to your instincts, right? You got to go fast. You got to make the right decisions. And the other one is the intellect. You got to measure twice and cut once, think thoroughly through how you want to position a brand, the story. Mm-hmm. So I'd imagine it appeals to both sides of
It does. I think one of the pieces that we leave out in that is that you have stakeholders that you're beholden to. You're beholden to a CMO or a board. And so as you're crafting narratives, you have to be scrappy and quick. And some companies want you to do it. And they want you to measure twice and cut once. But some of them are like, no, just go with it. Like, we trust it, go. And, you have different folks that you're sort of thinking about when you're building these narratives, when you're driving forward, you have other people that you're thinking about. And in the news business, you're thinking about the producer who has to approve your story. And in the business world, you're thinking about, is this going to be measured in a way that's going to influence the brand?
And I get it's more constituents, more complex.
Yes. And there's a lot more money at stake.
Yeah, right. A lot more money and brand and positioning and how that. Yeah, absolutely. Final question for you. We're in the midst of the great resignation, for lack of a better term. Yeah. What advice would you give somebody who's like, look, I've had success in the field. There's upside for me, but I just feel like it's time to go, or I'm burning out, or I need to do something new.
That's a great question. And I think there are a couple different, I don't know that I could be able to tell them one thing. I think if I were sort of sitting down with somebody and they're like, I'm burnt out and I don't know what I want to do next, I would say, take some time off. One of the things that happens to people in a high level where a job has a lot of responsibility is they don't take time for themselves. Yeah. There's so much unused paid time off because someone just doesn't feel like they have the flexibility to take time for themselves. And burnout happens when you're just grinding, right? You're just going and you're going and you're going. I think before you walk away or decide you're going to do something different or resign, I think it'd be smart to take advantage of company resources like paid time off and go someplace and refuel your body and your mind. Self-care is something that in the technology space and in the business world, we work so hard and so with so much vigor because there's so much at stake that you don't take time. And I think finding a way to get yourself out. And I always tell people when I'm working, I'm not a I'm not a marathon runner. I'm a sprinter, which I think being able to articulate that work style is important. I like to work for a couple of hours, and I'll grind and get it a lot done. And then I'm going to get up and I'm going to go for an hour-long walk with a podcast on. Mm-hmm. Or I'm going to get on the Peloton and go for a ride, or I'm going to go see a movie, or do something that brings me joy, because then I come back and I'm ready to get after it again. And I think before people resign or do something different, they should take stock of what they're doing that might be contributing to the burnout, and take a step back from it. And sometimes that might be a sabbatical. Sometimes that might be a week vacation. Sometimes that might be spacing out the workload so that they get more time for themselves and finding things that bring them joy. I mean, this year is a pivotal year for me, and I've decided I'm going to take flying lessons and get my private pilot's license. It's something I've always wanted to do. I've just never done it. And I'm going to make the time, regardless of my busy schedule, to do something for myself that, maybe I'll use it. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just take my kids to Disneyland or fly to Palm Desert. I have no idea, but I'm deciding to do something for me because I don't want to get into a place where I'm constantly looking for the next thing, or I'm so burned out that I just quit. So I think that's what, if I were giving any advice to someone, I'd say, take some time for yourself before you make a decision to get out of that industry, or to get out of the job, or to move on to something else. Find out what you're doing to contribute to that burnout, because no matter where you go, there you are. So you're going to get to the next location or the next big thing, and you're still going to have the same issues. You're just going to need, and you're going to have to deal with those demons at some point anyway. So figure out what that is now, so that you might still come to the conclusion, hey, I'm still ready to move on. Great. But you've taken the steps to figure out what you need for you, versus just being so burned out that you walk away.